Hi there, so welcome to this video for COMP3218, Game Design and Development at the University of Southampton. My name's Dave Millard, I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and I'm here with...
I'm Tom Blount, I also lecture on the course.
So we asked the students to do a kind of narrative game for this piece of work. Tom, do you want to say a little bit more about what we exactly asked them to do?
Absolutely. So for this coursework, as you say, we were interested in storytelling in games, so we asked our students to make a small game prototype featuring a game with a story engine, some way in which that the gameplay affects the narrative, and the narrative also affects the gameplay. And we asked them to base this game on one of 3 different fairy tales.
Cool. So, be interesting to see what we've got. So the first game up, I think, is called Animal Kingdom.
Animal Kingdom, here it is. So no title screen for this one, we are thrust straight into game world.
Okay, and we've got like a sort of voxely style world.
I reckon this was probably done with assets from Magica Voxel. Cool. No animations either, so we are just sort of sliding around, but we've got player E to interact, player E to pick up. Okay, at least we can't fall off the side of the thing, but we have no
that would be unfortunate.
Cow E to break.
Okay.
That's interesting. So the fact that we've got player and cow, I'm not sure what... Well, I mean, let's try interacting with something and see what happens. We've got no real goal of what we are or narrative context, unfortunately, but...
Nope, so there's no sort of premise.
So I've picked up a crate.
There it is.
I can't put it back down again. What happens if I... So I can't pick up this...
something in your hand.
So I can't pick up this money anymore. Cow E to break.
Can you click on the crate to put it down or anything? Or?
No, don't seem to. Can I interact with the cow? Hi there, would you like to help me? Help you do what? No.
Okay, so we've talked about having some context for your choices. There's literally no context at all. We don't know. Oh my, we do know, but we were asked, do we want to help before we knew what we had to do or who we are or where we are or anything.
And if we say no, then we just walk off. So it's not really a choice.
No. So presumably that's the cow we have to free down the bottom.
Oh, do you reckon? I don't know, it said they're lost, not they're trapped behind a gate. Cow E to break. Nope.
Break.
Oh, I can jump. Oh.
Oh my life.
Okay.
That's can you jump off the map?
I cannot, I did try that. You'll be pleased to know that was the first thing I tried to do.
Okay, shall we break the cow out?
Oh, hello. Oh, I can't break the cow out, it doesn't do anything.
E to build. E to build? Is that using the crate?
What?
Bring the cattle together.
Well, I've still got the crate, so that... What?
That's odd.
I've just created
a bridge. The power of my mind.
Alright, there's the cow, I guess.
There's another cow.
I can't...
You still haven't broke the other cow out. Do you have something against that cow?
I told you I can't break the cow out. It doesn't do anything. Look, if I wander over...
Does it not tell you anything or give any feedback?
It just says cow E to break, and I press E and nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you off then.
I don't know if I can swap... because all the other things say player E to do whatever. So I don't know if I have to swap to playing as the cow or something, but it's not... Ooh. Wait, what? So I had a crate, right? And then I came over here and I built this, and I still had the crate.
But now you can pick a thing up.
But now I can pick a thing. So I assume I actually did use the crate to build this.
You reckon the crate was a kind of a package of bridge building stuff?
Acme Bridge.
Which,
but it didn't update, so it was only through sheer dumb luck that I sort of just tried picking this up again.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I understand now why you're wandering over there to see if there's any other cows over there.
So there's nothing else you can do for me.
Okay. But we haven't done anything for you yet.
Wait, so when I put down the bridge, it said, get the cow over there.
Yeah.
I mean, how did it get lost over here? There wasn't a bridge.
Well, maybe there was. And you can go around that way. What happens if you go...
And I can't do anything with this because I'm holding a thing. And I've got no way of dropping this thing either, so...
And now we've got sort of cubic chickens. So, yeah, we would like to help you. So it's interesting, you can actually see a bit. The gap is too small for us to fit under.
How did you lose your eggs under that rock?
Can we get the arrows back to us? Okay.
How did you lose your eggs there if you can't fit there? Did you roll them under?
Right. More chickens.
You need the eggs?
You need the eggs to do that.
Oh, okay. Player E to enter, but I can't fit under there.
Jump over it, presumably?
No. Can I jump on? I can't jump on this either.
Can you not? Surely you were jumping all over the place earlier on. Maybe you have to do something to destroy the bridge, or I don't know.
I don't know. I've got these. So I've got this. I can only assume it's a gold bar or something.
Yeah.
To open this gate, you must have helped animals at least 5 times. Do you feel worthy?
Say yes.
You lied.
Okay.
Curse you! So you saw through our ruse.
So if you come right down the bottom where you found the cow across the bridge, there was something at the bottom of the screen there. I don't know what it was.
Oh, there's 2. Yeah, there's 2 cows here.
Now. Pick the money up.
Cow.
So if you go off to the left, and then come down, what was down here? The bridge. There we go. So
mushrooms. I'm not sure what. Are these rocks?
In the corner?
Hang on, are these tiny cats? Or rats? Or mice? Or
mice, maybe?
I can't interact with any of them. Oh, I can interact with this one.
Would you like to help me?
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, alright, fine. Our bridge was washed away by the river. How can we expand if we can't even talk? Make us a bridge. Not make us a bridge, please. Just make us a bridge. Cow, eat a break. Yeah, so it feels like we help the cow and we get a cow sidekick and then the cow can break fences or something like that. But that's not happened.
Okay.
So this feels very much... It's starting to feel very much like this is a game that wasn't quite finished.
Yes.
So I think maybe
was there a thing off to the right down the bottom just to kind of explore around?
Hang on. Have I been this way?
So
hello.
The game notes, by the way, imply that the game is finished.
Okay. Look at these greedy cows hoarding all that cheese. Is this cheese? Is that what this is? Oh, and now he's asking for the
chickens took our...
People will take back our land from those pesky birds. You're a fox. There's nothing else you can do for me.
Get the fox some cheese.
You'll regret that.
So this is what they said, right? So
and
they said
now I'm stuck off the screen. The camera's... Oh wait, no, hang on.
So what they said was, the story engine revolves around quests and relationships. There are a set of animals on the map, each with a relationship to the player. By interacting with the world, by performing quests, the player causes changes that impact their relationships to the animals, both positively and negatively depending on the quest. Animals with a positive, non-zero relationship can be used to accomplish certain quests that would otherwise be impossible. That's the cow bit, so you're right. Many of the tasks have negative consequences. For example, building a bridge between the foxes and chickens will make the foxes very happy and the chickens very sad.
I bet.
but it will. Yeah. Okay. So, are there some bits we haven't explored? Because have we actually successfully helped any animals yet?
I don't. Oh, hang on. There's some more crates over here.
Have we done anything?
I don't know. I don't think we managed to help
the bridge for the cow, but that didn't seem to be sufficient.
I also can't walk over here. There's just an invisible wall stopping me. Some very chonky foxes. And I can't see where I'm going over here.
So they've said once you have an animal, they become available as companions. The combination of the quests a player chooses to do and in what order will lead to different outcomes in the relationship scores, which in turn will decide the final beat of the story. Most of the decision points are not embedded in quest completion. You always have the chance of helping animals or not, but if you establish a negative relationship, you cannot access its quests anymore. Each choice, therefore, is foreseeable, helping an animal can only improve your relationship, and unpredictable, whether it hurts another animal or not, consequence. This makes it more like a choice rather than a simple calculation. So I from reading the game notes, I get the impression that they are actually trying to do something that's quite kind of interesting. They're setting up a load of different quests where the outcomes of the quests are positive for some things in the world and negative for others. And then they're maintaining your relationships with all of those things. And as a result of that, some quests will appear and some quests will disappear.
That's interesting.
You'll get different outcomes, and they'll join you as companions, which can help you on other quests or not. So it feels like there's a kind of an interesting idea for how to make this work, but it's just that we're so in the dark about where to go or what to do or how to do anything. So it's very hard for us to actually progress anything.
So I just had to restart this because there was a game-breaking bug where the camera wouldn't follow me anymore. But yeah. I just spoke to this, I assume it's a mouse, this small creature again, and it asked me, so previously it asked me to rebuild this bridge, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, and I've fallen off the world again, never mind. But this time it asked me to go and collect it some sugar, which unfortunately I can't do because I'm already carrying a crate. And yeah, now I've just fallen off the world again, so I'm going to have to restart. Okay. Shall we start going through the mark scheme as best we're able?
It's going to be difficult because I think we've not seen. I don't think we've seen any of the story engine working at all, right?
So I don't know. So we keep getting messages flashing up that say things like give butter to the thing, or you've done this.
Yeah, but you haven't. But have you successfully done any of the quests?
Well, that's the thing. I can't tell. Because I've built the bridge. I can't. Yeah. It feels like I've built the bridge to try and get this cow back, but this cow won't move. So I can't interact. Can I pick the cow up? No.
And then you can sit in the cow.
Yeah, I don't know why I even need to build this bridge because I can go the long route around.
Yeah.
So let's try, if they ask me to do the sugar quest again. So they want the fox's sugar. Bring sugar. Oh, they're ants. Oh, they're ants.
Oh, okay. Bring some sugar on the lower middle island. Now, which one is that?
But also, so this time they specifically asked me to get sugar from the foxes, but there's sugar right up here, so why can't I give them this?
Is that sugar?
Yep.
How do you know it's sugar?
Because the previous try I did for this, they asked me to fetch them this particular bit of sugar.
Okay.
But what's the lower middle island? I can't... Presumably this is the middle island.
I guess.
Unless there's ones even further.
What if you just go back to them?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's find out.
By the middle island, they meant this island that we're on, where you can find us.
Get the ant sugar.
Get the ant sugar. Okay.
See, you get this flashing message, but it implies that you haven't done that thing. But you only get that message when seemingly you have done the thing.
So if you press E now.
And now but I've still got the sugar apparently in my inventory, though I'm guessing that's a visual bug as well.
Okay, yeah.
And now he wants us to build a bridge.
Okay. So how do you build a bridge? You go over there with a crate, presumably.
Yep.
Do we know where there's a crate?
Yep. There's one on the island where I started all the way around here.
Okay, so while you are crate fetching, should we make a start on marking?
Yeah, so aesthetics.
I think they're consistent.
They look quite nice. There's
fine, aren't they?
Yeah, like it's a bit of a shame that this character's just sort of T-posing and sliding around.
But you know, it's all right.
No audio.
Yeah.
Like the dialogue boxes are just the sort of default Unity UI things. It'd be nice if they were.
So the problem we've got here is we've got absent audio, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got graphics are consistent. Oh, dope. So the graphics I think are good. The audio is poor. the information design is problematic, right?
Absolutely.
I would say that the information design is so poor as information design is not sufficient, and pass is some attempt at information design. I mean that.
You see, I get a thing saying bring the cattle together once I've built a bridge, but is that saying I've done it, or is that saying I've not done it, or is that saying now it's possible to do it and I should try, but then I can't?
About so the two things of information design they have got are prompts to interact with things, but they've just got that with a floating pickup thing, and showing you what you've currently got, and that's it.
And that's also bugged.
So I think unfortunately information design is not sufficient. So I think it's poor. So we have poor information design, poor audio.
Yeah, I can't actually get down here.
Satisfactory graphics. I think this is somewhere between a poor and a pass.
I would agree. I need a like sort of like this. Like you need a wood to do that. I'm pretty sure I don't. I'm pretty sure I need a crate, but
that's maybe that's what they call a wood.
I know, but it's not like they label that or anything, and no. I can't pick it up because I've got something in my hand, and I've got no way of getting rid of this thing. So, speaking of gameplay,
yeah. So this is the mechanics. Are there a set of mechanics? Are there usable controls? Is there meaningful play? So, what are the mechanics? You can move.
You can move. Interact. You can interact with various objects.
You have one inventory slot. And there's a dialogue clicker thing. So there is some mechanics, right? But
there is.
There's not a lot going on there.
You find the check completed, but it's still there.
Pass would be fewer inconsistent mechanics, challenging controls, and limited meaningful play. And poor would be few mechanics, difficult controls, very little meaningful play. I mean, it's difficult because it feels like it's very buggy. And that's the problem.
I think it's a combination of there are like some sort of like game-breaking bugs. There's a combination of the information design is poor, so it's very unclear what we're even meant to be doing. Yeah. But there's also some bad design choices in the mechanics. Yeah. So the fact that we can't pick up a second item is a deliberate design choice, but it means then we're locked into not being able to complete every quest except the one that needs that specific item. It would
be okay if you could put the item down.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but you can't.
Oh, there's also this jump, which is sort of useless. Like, not complementary, doesn't help us do any of the puzzles.
So I think actually the gameplay probably is poor. Few mechanics, difficult controls, leading to very little meaningful play. Unfortunately, I think that feels where it is. Bugs. Again, poor would be game runs, but is either very simple or there are serious bugs which make the game almost unplayable.
I think it might be both of those things.
Yeah, I think it is there. So that's unfortunately. Okay, story engine. So, what have we got going on here? So they haven't really said how it goes both ways, but we need to think about it. So the story engine is: does the game impact the story? Does the story impact the game?
Again, it's one of these examples where there's
very little story.
Yeah, exactly. There's little.
There's no premise. There's no kind of flavor text.
We don't know why we're on this floating island. We don't know why we should be helping these things. We don't know what's behind this door.
Is purely about the goals of the quest. I think there's a few little nods to things like.
There's a little bit of characterization where. I mean, like the fact that the fox wants to get to the chickens is probably the most amount of characterization in this.
Yeah.
And I think.
So there's almost no story, and in terms of maintaining the state of the story.
I mean, well, hang on. So, like, you say there's almost no story. What story is there?
So the only story there is the relationships between the animals, which implies whether or not you want to do the quests. So the best example of that is the foxes and the chickens, I think. But
again, that's not even brought across in the game. That's sort of we're making that assumption because it's a fox and it's a chicken.
No, I think they did say, didn't they, that they?
It says in the game notes that they won't be happy if they do that.
The chickens took our land.
So that's the thing. This, I guess, is sort of the only story in it.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm talking about. We'll get our land back, right? So.
All right.
So there's almost no story anyway. in terms of the story impacting the game, so if you certainly is the case, if you help one of them, it does cut off other quests and make other things available to you, but that doesn't seem
but then this breaks the game doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's difficult to see any evidence of that.
So yeah, we haven't got any evidence of it. I think that's the problem.
So when we complete a quest, for example,
the story engine is there, and their game notes describe a story engine where your actions in the story do influence the game, and where your actions in the game influence the story, right? But that's not manifest in the game we've got.
Yeah. So for example, when we rescue that chicken, nothing perceptible changes. The lost chick is still lost.
Yeah.
All the chicken does is give. It doesn't say thank you. It just says, "Would you like to help me again?"
Yeah. So okay, so here we go. So a poor would be some support for story elements in the game, but no real story engine. And absent would be a story premise, but no serious attempt at integrating the story with the game. And we haven't even got a premise here, right?
Yeah.
You might still say it's worth, because even absent, even that is worth, some marks. So you might even say that it's still worth an absent because of those elements in the dialogue which allude to some relationships and story. But it still, I think, is absent.
I think you might be right.
Agency. So do we have an interactive story with several branching points with interesting choices? And is your agency managed?
Sorry, before we go on to that, did we discuss bugs? Yeah, we did. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So agency, yeah. So okay, so what are the branching points here? So again, the problem is that they describe something where you've got all these animals and these sort of different interactions between them, but it's not actually manifest in the game we're playing.
Also, I can just sort of stack up on quests. So every time I talk to him, he just says, "Do you want to help me?" And my choice is yes or stop playing the game effectively.
Yeah. So okay, so I don't think we've got. So I think what they have described is an interactive story with several branching points. What they've delivered, though, what we're playing, is an interactive story with few branching points, right? Which is poor.
I mean, I'm not seeing any. The problem is, it's not that I'm not seeing branching points; it's that I'm not seeing progression. So,
No.
I've given the ant the sugar, but nothing about the world or even the story has changed.
So again, absent would be a story with no branches or choices of consequence.
It's clear that. So, for example, this is the only thing that makes me think that.
Yeah.
When I help,
it's intended to be there, it's just not working.
Yeah.
So poor would be an interactive story with few branching points, few interesting choices, and player agency is problematic. And absent would be a story with no branches or choices of consequence. And it feels a little bit better than absent completely. There's some nods to it. But I don't even know if it gets to the poor though. It may be between the two.
Perhaps. Again, there's sort of. It's difficult to say whether it was their intention to do it and they didn't manage to include it, or they did include it and it's broken.
Yes. Yeah. But we can only mark what's in the game, right? I mean, the game notes are there to kind of give us a steer to understand what's going on, but we can't mark what they describe. We can only mark what we're playing. Let's talk about poetics. So, are the narrative and gameplay in conflict? Are the key mechanics opposed to the themes of the story? So the problem here is that there isn't anything, right?
So yeah, this is a tricky one to mark given mark scheme as it stands.
Yeah. So poor would be narrative and gameplay are in conflict. The key mechanics are opposed to the themes of the story. I mean, there aren't any really themes to the story. I don't think they're opposed. Pass would be narrative and gameplay have some conflicts. Some of the mechanics go against the themes of the story.
I think part of the problem is there's not only is there limited story, there's limited mechanics.
I think we have to interpret this is that if they're absent, right, then there's no way that they can be positive, and that in a sense that is being in conflict, right? That what should be happening here is we should have some kind of synergy going on. I mean, So if we think about the design that's embedded in the game, even if that design is buggy, what's going on here is you're helping the animals. The story is all about karma. It's all about, and so that's kind of there, but it's not very well manifest, right?
I mean, is it?
And the mechanics are just kind of random. So they sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't make sense. So I kind of think on the poetics it's a pass. What they've designed.
Oh, I can jump over that thing.
Ah. Okay.
What? What?
Oh, you just walk straight through it the other way.
What? Okay. Okay, so the jumping does actually have a point in that there's a little jumping puzzle up here, though.
So I
No,
think
I can't actually jump
are
up
probably a pass. I think they've designed something which is not really in conflict, but there are some conflicts because it seems.
So, for example, here,
Yeah.
I've helped the ants. I've built a bridge, but that's annoyed the cows.
Yeah.
How? Why?
Yeah. Well, there's no reason to it.
So again, this is my point. That's like thematically dissonant.
Okay.
There's
yeah.
no reason for like the fox and the chickens. Sure, fine. Helping the foxes like harms the chickens. We can understand that. But there's no reason for this. This is just a sort of, well, we needed some other sort of link between these relationships. But there's also, it's not about karma. We're not doing any of these things because it's good. We're doing it because there's a locked door that says you must do 5 things.
And sometimes that randomness we would count as being in conflict. It's kind of that's the point.
And it's bugged out again because as soon as I do something that another creature regrets, it breaks the game.
So I think if we put the poetics down as poor because of that randomness, let's talk about the techniques, pacing, game writing mechanics.
There's dialogue.
There's dialogue,
but again, it's very limited. None of it really conveys story. The only bit that conveys story is the fox saying, "These chickens took our land." Everything else is just go do this thing.
So absent would be descending pacing, no serious attempt to use any game writing techniques. So I would say that poor would be no serious attempt to control pacing, an unsuccessful attempt to use at least one game writing technique.
I think it probably hits that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's probably a fairly good description of what's there actually. And lastly, feedback. So where did we get with feedback? So they said, improved agency. We were advised to focus on providing more meaningful decisions in the story and to ensure that decisions were not in fact calculations. To this, we provided more connections between the animals, letting players favour some for personal story-based reasons. Having made also sure to balance the animals to ensure there was no objective reason for helping anyone in particular. Despite this, there are still significant gameplay-altering changes based on which animals the player has chosen to help. I mean, so in fairness, the one thing we picked up on was the little bits of relationship between the stories that between the animals, which have some narrative kind of context, but they've not successfully delivered that. So I would say feedback was articulated is satisfactory, but some changes have been made with partial success. I'm not quite convinced by that. I would say it's more like few changes have been made with little success.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, they say this has gameplay changes.
Yeah,
but
doesn't seem.
But what gameplay changes? They don't articulate that, and I don't see any gameplay changes other than. Well, actually, no, I don't even see any. So, and that's partly because it's bugged, so I can't then go and talk to the cow and see if that cuts off that quest. But it doesn't really seem to.
I mean, I think that the
like if I'd done all of the cow quests first and then annoyed the cow, then so what? What impact does that have?
So I would say that they've articulated their feedback, which is satisfactory, but that few changes have been made with little success. Right? Maybe even down towards absent. They've done hardly anything to incorporate it.
Yeah, they have articulated the feedback. I think they could have articulated it better by describing how they'd made those changes or sort of what impact they'd had on the final game. But
so I think the feedback in terms of how well they've articulated it, it's kind of up, maybe slightly below satisfactory, but up near there.
Yeah.
But for the other aspect, what they've actually done is more like poor and maybe even a bit below, maybe towards the absent. So I think that probably means they're sort of between the two. They're halfway between a poor and a pass feedback.
Yeah, I think probably so.
Okay.
Cool.
So I think this has been difficult because it's not entirely clear whether the game is working as it should, right? And how much is bugs and how much is design. But they've clearly articulated in their design, in their game document, a game which has all the elements in we're seeing, but where all of those elements work together to create a kind of coherent experience. And the problem is we're just not getting that when we play the game, so which is a shame. And it may just be that there was a lack of time, or there were some issues that prevented them from putting it together. But I think we should probably move on.
Yeah, let's move on. And now we've got Adventures of Thumb.
Okay, so a title screen.
Yeah,
slightly plain.
Slightly plain, but it gives us a title. It's doing its job. Tom's dad needs him to bring his cart so that he can attach it to his horse.
Okay.
The cart is over that house opposite. Okay.
No messing about. We're straight into the fetch quests.
Follow the waypoint marker.
Waypoint marker.
WSD to move. Shift to run.
Okay. So good to tell us what to do.
And right off the bat, A and D aren't doing anything.
Oh dear. Oh.
Okay. They only work when I'm moving. That feels very odd. But okay. Off we go to the waypoint marker. Let's sprint a little bit. Let's go, Tom. Pump those tiny legs. Oh no, there's some strangers by the cart.
Okay.
Go and talk to them to find out what they want. It feels like that could sort of happen a bit more organically, because we're going to have to go past them anyway. Hey, are you from around here? You are small but very strong. I'm not sure how I've demonstrated that. You should come and work for us. We will pay you and your dad some good money. Do you want to accept that offer for 500 gold?
So I'm feeling we're lacking some of the context around this choice.
Yeah.
Like, is 500 gold a lot of money? Sounds like a lot of money. If you have to give me 500 gold coins, I'd be quite happy about that, I think.
Yeah. Like, what would we spend the 500 gold on though?
What's it for?
So we've seen.
What's our relationship with our family? Who are we? Why are we here?
Right. So far, we know our name is.
Question.
We know our name is Tom, and we know we have to fetch a cart, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So I mean, should we sell ourselves?
Given that all we know is that Pa wants a cart, perhaps we could give him 500 gold instead, and he'd be happy with that. So yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
You have earned 500 coins.
Okay.
You have to go with the strangers and help them with their task. However, Tom has a plan to escape using his size. But what?
Why is he okay?
Okay, and now we're somewhere else, and we've escaped.
Oh, okay. You want to escape from the buyers. All right, so we kind of skipped over the most interesting bit of the narrative. They're obviously taking from the Coen Brothers School of Filmmaking.
People in the village are looking for you. Stay away from their sight and find a well or a haystack to hide. Why are the villagers looking for us?
I don't know. And why are we hiding from them? Oh, I suppose because we've slipped away from the...
We're stolen property. I'm just going to go and talk to one of them and see what they say. Hello? Hello? Oh, I've been spotted. Back to the... Okay, so we have to get to a haystack. I guess that is a haystack over there.
So what happened then when you were spotted?
There was a very, very brief flash that said you were spotted, and then it just took us back to the start of the scene.
Ah, that's what I missed.
There's not a huge amount of challenge to just walking over here. But it's also not obvious where they're looking. Like, how far does their vision cone extend? So if I stand here... Oh, he's just going to walk off in that direction anyway. Never mind. Let's...
I think it's quite hard to do a really effective stealth game in a 3D environment as well. It's a challenging challenging format to use.
Hide in the
Hide in
haystack.
the haystack?
Yes, no. No.
What? Why would we hide in the haystack?
Because we were told to hide in the haystack. But I get that that's just a continue game button. There's no reason not to
really?
hide. Yeah.
So just reset you back to the beginning. Okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure I got spotted because I was standing around. But again, I'm just going to run straight there. Alright, I do technically have to pause a little bit. But yeah, if I press no, then it's just a... Okay, just... Carrot, do you want to hide in it now?
Yeah, let's hide in it now.
Okay, yeah, sure. Continue with the game. You have successfully evaded the villagers.
I'm wondering now whether if you refuse to go with the people... and that's it.
But
so, it is worth saying...
Still got 500 gold.
Yes. So this is one of the games that was handed in... a little bit late. I think there were some circumstances around the students putting it together. So they've obviously tried to put something together as best they can and hand it in. Which is why it's a bit short and why it's kind of lacking some of those things. Yeah, let's try saying no here and seeing what actually happens. Yeah.
Tom refused the offer, so the men threatened to harm your dad's horse if you don't help them. You accepted going with them and stole 300 coins.
Okay.
Now you will make a plan to escape. You have escaped.
And
now I have 800 coins.
Well, let's talk about the mark scheme. So, presentation. So that's graphics, information being shown, and audio. So the graphics are kind of, I mean, they're kind of,
they're alright. They're like a little bit cartoony,
okay,
but they've taken an asset pack and they've sort of put it together quite nicely. Like honestly, the actual sort of layout of like the landscape and the surroundings, and they've dotted it with trees and a well and a couple of different buildings. Like that's quite nicely put together.
It is quite nicely put together, isn't it?
Like look at the cold, dead eyes of this guy. That's creepy.
So I would say that the graphics are certainly consistent, which is good.
I don't know. I mean, to a degree, we are like the people are quite sort of shiny and glossy and cartoony compared to like this tree, so they're not totally consistent.
No, but they've gone with all the characters are the similar.
Yeah,
you're right. But all the characters look the same, all the buildings look the same, all the plants look the same. They're kind of there's a certain consistency, and and they're not completely out of sync. What about audio?
No audio, unfortunately.
So you're not spotting anything at all?
Nope.
So that is absent. And what about key information?
Well, we've got our gold.
We got our gold, although we don't know what that is, but we'll get to that later on, I suppose. And we've got the marker showing you where to go for your current objective.
But only in this scene. In the following scene, it doesn't happen, and we also don't have any indication of what the villagers can see, what their vision radius and things is. And if you're doing a stealth section, that's usually quite important. I mean, it's at least obvious sort of which direction they're facing and sort of where they might be looking.
I mean, I would say that the information design is probably at the, I don't know if it's even at the past level, some attempt at information design, because they really haven't. The critical bits like the stealth component, like you said, it's completely absent.
Well, I think this is going to be sort of a bit of a trend with this game, is that because it's a lot smaller in scope, there's not necessarily a lot of information for them to convey.
No. But even so, I think what we're looking at is probably good graphics, poor information design, and absent audio. So I think that probably puts them somewhere between a poor and a pass in terms of where they are for presentation.
Yeah, I think so.
Gameplay. So what are there a set of mechanics? Are the controls usable, and is there meaningful play? Oh, you're off on your testing trick again.
I'm just escaping the village.
How did you get 1100 gold?
Because it doesn't reset between levels.
That'd be why then.
So you get 500 if you say yes. You get 300 if you say no.
And 500.
Well, it doesn't ever get reset. But the other thing is, I found another spot in this level that you can hide. You can hide in the hay cart like you're told to, and then you get a sort of, well done, you win. Or you can try and hide in the well instead, and then you just say, the villagers caught you, you lose 200 gold, but then oddly you reset back to the beginning of the game.
Right.
So there's no way to actually sort of run out of gold.
Well, the gold doesn't do anything, right?
Well, yeah. You can call it your end of game score if you like.
What are the mechanics here? So you can walk about. You've got interaction dialogues where you click continue or make choices.
That's kind of it.
That's it.
I mean, you can be spotted by the villagers and stuff.
Oh
like,
yeah,
the sort of the stealth bit.
So I would say that is few mechanics. I would say.
Yeah.
Controls, you said, are awkward.
Yeah, I mean, sort of when you're moving, they feel quite fine and smooth. It's just a little bit odd that you can only turn when you're running, so you can't just sort of turn and look around. Which again, in a sort of stealth game, sort of standing and sort of taking in your surroundings and sort of looking around to make sure the path is safe before you start running. So I'd say it's quite important.
I think the few mechanics is at the poor level. The what you're looking at there is challenging controls, which is at the pass level. And what about meaningful play? I mean, there's not a lot, is there?
There's not a lot, no, unfortunately.
So probably very little meaningful play, which is also at the poor level. So I think, again, that puts them between a poor and a pass. Bugs.
Well, the gold not resetting, I think is probably a bug.
Yeah. The other thing that's in the bugs is the complexity of the game.
Yeah.
So
these dialogue options sort of remaining here.
Yeah.
Probably another one.
So I would say that what we have here is frequent minor bugs.
But the main thing here is going to be the complexity of the game, right? It's just there's not a lot here.
I would say it's very simple, which is down at the sort of the poor level, I think. I mean, you can run around and you can do stuff, so maybe that's a pass. Pass is simple. It's a very simple game. Halfway between the two?
I think halfway between the two, just because like it is very simple, but also like it's not complete. Like the goal doesn't reset. Yeah. There's no like the game just sort of stops halfway through.
So let's have a think about the narrative bits, the story engine. So they've written, how does the narrative impact the game world? In the game, the player has a coins feature which changes depending on the choices made through the game. You get different amounts of coins for a choice, or lose coins by making a decision. So that's supposed to be how the narrative affects the game. If the coins were useful for anything,
like if you could spend them in a shop, then yes, I'd agree with that. But the coins are actually
without that, they don't.
They're not part of the game. They're part of the narrative almost. Yes. It's sort of it's almost like a narrative high score. Like you completed the game and you got this many coins. Rather than
how does the game world impact the narrative? There is a decision which the player can make with two conflicts in the environment. Since the final level could not be implemented, the amount of coins it has at the end of the game creates the different endings. So they ran out of time. So the two different objects, that's the well and the haystack, right? And you get two alternative outcomes. So
yeah, but that's not
dependent. So there's a little bit of interaction.
No, because that's not dependent on the coins you've got.
No, but it's dependent on you're making a decision in the game world about which one to go to, and then you get a different outcome, right?
Yeah, but they said something about the amount of coins you have affects the ending.
Oh, it says it creates the different endings. Yes, it does say that. You're right. Also, I'm not really sure that you have successfully evaded the villages counts as narrative. I mean, again, so poor would be some support for story elements in the game, but no real story engine. The story has no real impact in the game world and is not really impacted by events there. Pass would be
I feel sort of where we might be. Like they're
it does, yeah.
Like they are sort of tracking things. Like I mean, they are tracking the coins, but
I'm wondering again because a pass is a basic story engine with poor integration with the game world. And again, it feels like maybe we're halfway between the two again.
Perhaps.
But I don't know. There's so little going on.
So, like at its most basic, what have we got? We've got basically pop-ups appearing when we hit certain triggers, but they will pop up again and again if you go over the trigger again as well.
Choices which have some consequence in variable state.
Yeah, but very little consequence, sort of story-wise. You still end up in exactly the same.
I think there's so little. I think we've got to go for some support for story elements in the game, but no real story engine, which is a poor.
Yeah, I think we have to.
Okay, agency. So is this interactive story? Does it have branching points? Are there interesting choices? And are they managing player agency? No, not a lot, right?
No, there's arguably two branches, but the first one is just do you accept the money or not.
Yeah.
But the only difference that has is you only get 300 gold instead of 500 gold.
Yeah. I think this is a classic poor against. This is an interactive story with few branching points, few interesting choices, and player agency is problematic. And it's problematic because if you make the wrong choice, it just resets you, right?
Yeah.
So the design for poetics, this is to the narrative and gameplay. Are they in conflict, or are they kind of working together? Basically, is their narrative and gameplay to be in conflict for a start? So what do we got here? So the problem is there's hardly any premise. Like we said, we don't know who we are. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know really anything about our role in the world. So the story has no theme or meaning, right? It's just a little interaction.
Yeah.
And that means that I don't think there are any conflicts, but the reason there aren't any conflicts is because there's nothing to conflict with.
Yeah, like the theme itself is kind of absent because there's no context for, like you say, who we are or what we're doing. We know that, like, all we know about ourselves in this game is we're called Tom, and that our dad wants us to fetch a cart.
And the choices are completely, completely blind, right? So I would say that because of that, I would say that that's like being in conflict, right? You don't know why you're making the choices or what the consequences are going to be, or you have none of that kind of sense. But I wouldn't say that the narrative is so absent. Would be the narrative is undercut by the gameplay. Poor would be that they're in conflict, and I kind of think that because it's absent, we have to give it down at the poor level.
Yeah, I think so.
Techniques. So this is pacing and the use of game writing techniques. So
all right. So in terms of techniques, they have the dialogues that pop up. They sort of give you a little bit of context. Like I say, context. They give you a little something as you're running around. So
yeah.
I sort of said right at the start, it'd be nice if some of that actually happened a bit more organically rather than sort of saying, you should now go and talk to these guys. But the fact that it pops up gives you a little bit of something.
Yeah, so that's there.
So they've used...
pacing.
The pacing, though, is sort of... Again, because there's not a lot here, the pacing's kind of non-existent.
Yeah.
And again, that's a problem with the contextualization. We don't know who we are or what we're doing or what our ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
Or... we don't have any sense of peril, really.
No.
And like you said, the fact that the most interesting bit here is the escape. It's like Tom will come up with a plan to use his size and intelligence to escape. Now he's escaped.
Yeah.
Like the one sort of dramatic peak they have in this, they just sort of, it vanishes, which is a real shame.
It is, and I can understand why they've kind of done it, because they're pressed for time and they want to. It's a more complex piece of the interaction, but it's the most interesting bit.
I agree, but weirdly, if that bit of narrative had said, "Aha, Tom is about to slip away. Let's see if he can get past them and their accomplices and escape."
Yes, all of a sudden would be.
Then this is the escape. It's like nothing else has changed, but then you still have that at least sort of bit of a dramatic peak.
Just comes down to how you frame it. Yeah, that's a very good point. So I think we're looking at no serious attempt to control pacing, which is poor. And as for the game writing technique, I would say they've got a partially successful attempt to use at least one game writing technique. And I would say it's partially successful because it tells you what to do and gives you some basic information, but doesn't actually convey the story particularly well.
Yeah, the majority of it is used to sort of tutorialize the controls.
Yeah. So again, that's actually halfway between a poor and a pass.
Okay. Feedback.
So they said We didn't attend the online feedback session, but we got some feedback from friends and family. We tried to keep the conversation of the game clear as possible and not go out of context. The story had to be consistent with the environment the game took place in, with miscommunication with the group and some time constraints. The branching and story created is limited. So they're well aware of the shortcomings of what they've done. So the problem is
that feedback session is a part of the course,
and it's absent, I think. So we just have to say it's absent. There's no serious attempt to include feedback. I think we can. They've addressed it in their notes, so they won't get right at the bottom, but they're in the absent category, I think. Okay, so it's always difficult to kind of go through a game like this because obviously the students who've handed it in know it's not complete. They know it's not going to hit all the things in the scheme, but hopefully by going through it, we can kind of show why it ends up with what it gets. But it had some potential. I think they could have built on that stealth mode a little bit.
They have a solid foundation, like you say. They've got evidence that they know what techniques need to be in this to improve it. So if they did want to take it further and carry on improving it, it could turn into something really nice.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. All right, and our next game in this batch is GreyWatch.
So nice, pretty graphic and the font fits as well, so that's nice. So there's a nice bit of consistency.
Yeah, it is quite surprising how much to sort of finding an image to sort of put on your title screen really sort of makes it feel very polished. So let's hop into the game.
And also fonts. I mean, it's one of those crazy things, but picking an appropriate font makes a big difference too.
This is quite nice. Got
I
some
like this.
Lovely sort of lilting lute or something in the background. Feels very medieval. Should I do a dramatic reading? Let's do a dramatic reading.
Well, yeah, you might be ending. I think it's a visual novel, so you might end up doing a lot of dramatic reading.
Radio. As the land sleeps, strange machinations become at work in the night. As day breaks, the quiet ambience shifts to the sound of nature rising from their beds.
Nice.
Mystic. Oh, you know it's going to be good when you start getting names like Mystica.
Yeah.
The land of magic was about to fall into a strange and wild sequence of events, guided by fate, or divine or worldly creatures. The story fell before a great prophecy.
Okay.
A hero shall awaken and be called to their duty. They will walk the lands of Mystica in search of a treasure that will save them and the people from an incoming evil.
This is. I've never seen this story before. I'm gripped.
They will climb the Well, I mean, you say that. It's meant to be based on a fairy tale.
That's true.
They will climb the delicate path in their chosen destination, then swim across a great lake to find a man of wisdom, then fight through the sprawling wood in search of the Valley of Truth.
So that's kind of interesting that they're foregrounding all of this.
Their destiny awaits. I mean, it's a prophecy. You've got to have a prophecy. The forest echoes with sounds of scuttling animals and swaying flora.
Oh, they've got a different...
3 siblings venture between intertwining paths back to their hometown of Delta, located by the sea.
Okay.
The youngest one walks with an extra foot of energy, which the 2 more complacent siblings reluctantly follow.
Okay. Ah, there we go.
The woods are refreshing. The trees provide great shade on the walk back. I guess this is the fleet of foot sibling.
Yes. Who has a thing for ribbons.
This is a visual novel. There's going to be a lot of anime and ribbons, I imagine.
Purple hair. Yep.
Carcer, slow down. You'll get lost if you run off. Also, look, Astra looks like she is about to collapse. So, we're being introduced to each of the 3 siblings.
Okay, I like the. Do you notice they go? The one that's talking is lit, which is nice as well.
Yeah. I couldn't care less if Carcer runs off without us. Although they were siblings, the older siblings were not always the kindest towards Carcer. Whenever they had the chance, they would leave Carcer to go on reckless adventures into the wilderness.
I was gonna say, I kind of, I know it's not a novel thing. It's a very, very common. But what's nice about this kind of construction is that not only can you see who's talking, you also get a visual representation of who else is in the conversation.
Yeah, that is quite a nice touch.
So kind of, not only does it look good because it gives you, it kind of isn't just raw text, but it does give you some information and context, which is quite useful. Okay, so.
Although it's a little bit of a shame that when the narrator's speaking, it's still the middle character that was highlighted.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't run off anymore. And then before Carter could continue speaking, a wild deer suddenly leaps between the trio, circling before running off in a direction. Okay, what was wrong with that deer? I don't know, it's probably lost its mum and is in panic. I think it was signalling us to follow it.
Okay.
Don't be ridiculous, animals aren't intelligent enough to do anything like that. Before the deer runs off, it turns and glances towards Carter before taking off. Oh, Timmy's definitely stuck down the well.
Yes.
We're going to chase the deer. Carter chases the deer. Moments later, they reach a small clearing in the forest. Deer stops and perches away.
Have we had any interactions yet?
No, not yet. That's why I'm upping my pace slightly, because it's nice having this sort of introduction, but usually, like in any sort of game, you want some sort of hook to get the player invested in it.
Yes.
So we've got a small girl beside the deer.
Okay.
Hello. Yes, we're going back home. Who are you? Just playing here, decided to rest in the forest. Could you perhaps allow me to accompany you? Okay, so that's Astra talking, but yeah, not properly highlighted, unfortunately. Point.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So. Okay, so our first bit of interaction and gameplay. Do we let this mysterious child follow us home?
Okay, what should Carter do?
And we've been given, a reasonable bit of setup and some context around this decision, like some reasons why we should help and why we shouldn't.
Yeah, that's quite nice. Should we allow her to accompany us?
Yes, what's the worst? What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing could possibly go wrong. It's all fine.
Oh, that was quick. We are home now. This looks familiar.
No way. Yeah.
Okay, and nothing went wrong after all. We've been given some magic honey.
Some special honey.
Sudden dramatic music.
Yes. Wave of water.
So we're having a thrilling battle described to us, but no real input on it.
Yeah, and no choices within the battle. Which is, I feel like it's almost a shame, because you can set these up as a kind of little narrative puzzle to try and get through as well.
I'm just going to turn the sound down slightly because it's extra dramatic. There we go. So yeah, even without going full sort of JRPG sort of battle screen where you're sort of picking party members and items and all of that nonsense, like even just a choice of do you use the water spell or the fire spell kind of thing.
Yeah.
There we go. So this is the woman that.
So we're pushing through this because we obviously we want to get through it in the time we have, but also it's because the story's not engaging us particularly.
Like there's a lot of cognitive load that's.
And the choices aren't that interesting because you don't really know. I mean, they have kind of set them up, but you don't really care particularly about what's going to happen either way. So why is that, do you think?
So you're right. Like the contextualization behind them is not so. Particularly the very first choice, like there were arguments for this, arguments against it, but for some of the others, it feels very much a case of it sort of falls back to the I'll be nice or I'll just not be bothered kind of thing, and that partly makes the choice very easy because I'll just sort of pick I'll just always pick the nice option because I feel like that's what this character would do.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know, there's just something about them that isn't quite engaging, and I think it might be that they're so spread out. They're so spread out and they don't feel like a sort of a big meaningful choice. They feel more like they should be sprinkled through.
Text, aren't you? You're barreling through the text to try and get it done, and then you suddenly hit a choice and you're like, oh, hang on a minute. And you've not really been engaged with that.
So there are lots of sort of choose your own adventure games and sort of interactive narrative things like this that I do really enjoy, but a lot of those have, like I say, have more sort of interspersed decisions and choices for you to make, but they also have more context isn't the right word, but more more mechanics almost. So they'll either have sort of like a couple of stats or something that change slightly.
I was going to get onto that because there's to me the big problem here is that it, as a visual novel, I mean a visual novel is fine, but a visual novel isn't a game. It becomes a game when, like I said, there are either puzzles within the narrative that you have to solve. So you can actually do it with the narrative mechanisms, right? So you can do it that way, or you can do it by having game-like elements around the narrative. So even things like, the old school fighting fantasy books, where you have an inventory and you have stats and you have fights, right, to progress between particular pages. But here, there's none of that stuff. There's no mechanics at all. And as far as I can tell, the choices are all plot-driven rather than puzzle-driven or anything like that.
Yeah.
So an example would be, I forget which one it is, but in one of the Life is Strange games, you have a conversation with someone, and your job is to try and persuade them to help you, right? And it's quite a complex conversational tree, but you have the ability to rewind time in that game. So you have the conversation, you fail, so you rewind time to the beginning, but through the conversation, you've learned something about that character, and you can now use that information to better negotiate your way through the narrative, right? Through the dialogue tree. So over a couple of iterations, by learning about the context and learning about what his reactions might be to certain things, you figure out a way to steer through the conversation. And that's what I mean by a narrative puzzle, right? It's where the structure of the narrative, actually understanding that structure, remembering information and then using that to make choices, that has a game-like quality to it. So you can have a game in the raw narrative structure, but it's hard to pull off. It's a lot easier if you just have a couple of stats along the way, and if you have particular goals and things that you're trying to achieve that you're monitoring.
Shall we start going through the mark scheme?
Let's go through. So in terms of the presentation, the presentation seems pretty nice to me. The graphics are really nice and consistent. The fonts work. Yeah, there's a tiny bit of mismatch between some of the assets, but they're all anime assets. They all kind of go together.
Yeah.
The music, I think.
Music's nice. It sort of changes depending on what scene you're in. It sort of sets the tone of the encounter.
Yeah. And the information design, there's not an awful lot of information to get across, but there are some nice things about who is talking, for example. It's a shame that they haven't got that who's in the conversation thing working a bit better, because that could work really well. But I think there is key information is shown, or arguably some attempt to information design, which is the sort of satisfactory level. But the graphics and audio, I think, are up at least the good level. Good is graphics are consistent, appropriate use of audio, and excellent would be consistent and appealing graphics, good use of audio with effects and/or music.
Honestly, I think the graphics and audio might reach that.
Yeah, so I think you're probably right. So if we say that the key information is maybe satisfactory, the graphics and audio are up at the excellent level, that probably means it's somewhere between good and excellent, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. Again, it's sort of a testament to what you can accomplish with very simple sort of assets and things that you've found.
But just being consistent and thinking about how using it. So using music to show location, right? It's quite nice. Gameplay. So this is where we might start to get some problems. So is there a set of complementary mechanics? Are there smooth usable controls? And is there meaningful play?
And this is the thing. There's not a lot in terms of meaningful play, just because there's not a huge amount of play. There's a couple of...
There's not a lot of complementary mechanics either.
Well, yeah.
The basic level, what are your mechanics?
Well, there's one mechanic really. It's pick an option out of two.
So unfortunately, I would say the mechanics here are actually...
verging on absent.
Yeah, poor would be few mechanics, and absent would be very limited mechanics. They really are almost down at that level, I think. The controls, there's hardly anything there.
Oh, the controls are smooth and usable.
But I think we have to link them to the play. So
yeah.
Do they lead to meaningful play?
And that's the thing, there's not a huge amount. So, for example, there, during that sort of battle, it's like, do you charge forward or do you wait? And it's like, well... Yeah. Does it matter which one I pick? Is it going to have an impact?
No. So I think... it feels to me that it's limited meaningful play. That you do feel... you are at least...
there are moments where you get to sort of control sort of what's happening, but like you say, they're limited.
So actually, I think that puts the gameplay at the poor level. If we're basically saying the mechanics are very limited, which is absent, and the meaningful play is at the kind of pass level, that sort of puts it down at poor, I think, unfortunately.
I will say they have written a lot of content for this.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the amount of words on screen, there is a lot.
Yeah.
But it's just a shame it's not brought across sort of in the complexity of your interaction with it.
Well, also, it's that classic problem where there's a lot of information dumped. So we're learning here about a whole race of aquatic people, right?
And that's it. If it was broken up into a sort of, the standard sort of RPG kind of, tell me more about this race of aquatic people. Tell me more about the castle.
But also, how is it relevant to us? Why do we care about this race of aquatic people? Okay. Bugs. I mean, the game's relatively simple, but
I mean, there's no bugs other than I don't know what.
okay.
Yeah.
So do we think the game is playable and reasonably complex, or is it playable and simple?
I think it's simple. I think we have to say it's simple. Again, for the same reason that because there's so few mechanics, it can't be complex.
So that puts it at the pass, I think. Right, story engine. So this is again, they're going to cripple themselves a bit by not having a kind of a game world, really. But to what extent does the story engine is integrated with the game world? Now, there are examples where the story impacts the game world and is impacted by events from the game world. So what they said was, your choices have impacts on the world as it affects what dialogue the characters present and what future choices can be made later in the game. The story is set in a fantasy world which adds some surreal elements, which is emphasised in the design of the UI and character designs. Between sequences of dialogue, there are choices in which you can choose. They split the narrative, and they also act as a red herring to muddle the sense of obvious bait that these choices represent. The goal in the design is to make the player choose without any bias against the narrative by understanding the game will split on their choices. Because of the fabula being presented in a visual novel format, the impacts rely solely on the direction of story. For example, when you go to Icona is made instead of the water temple, the fabula prevents you from reversing that decision and traveling to the water temple. Unique dialogues is lost. I mean, the problem is what they've done with the story engine is they've described how the interactive narrative bit works. They've not actually talked about how the story engine...
I mean, they've almost explicitly said, like, there's no gameplay in it by saying...
Yeah. So...
I mean, this goes back to, again, what we were saying with the mechanics, because there's so little in terms of game world, we can't see an impact in it.
There's nothing to integrate, right? That's the problem. So the story engine. So it's worth saying what the story engine is, right? So the story engine is not the thing that's driving the narrative. The story engine is the thing that is managing the relationship between the narrative and the game world, right? So just because you have a narrative doesn't mean you have a story engine.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. So if we look at Absent says a story premise, but no serious attempt at integrating the story with the game, right? Poor is some support for story elements of the game, but no real story engine. And the Pass, the basic story engine, but with poor integration with the game world.
And looking at the mark scheme, I would say it's probably around a poor. In that they've got they certainly have a story. They've got a lot of story.
Yes.
But because they have no game, there's no engine to act as the go-between the story and the.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, sort of your effects on the game world, we're talking about, for example, did you find every coin in the world kind of thing, and that has an impact on a knock-on impact on the story, like things that you actually do within the game, not necessarily. So yes, you can argue that sort of picking a decision is sort of like a mechanic or part of a game, but that's sort of a narrative mechanic rather than a game world.
So. You could argue that the story engine is at least managing the narrative bit, I suppose, that it's enabling you to make choices and keeping track of your decisions.
In which case, it's just the sort of the failure to integrate with the game world because it's not there. So would that lift it up a bit?
I think so. I think it would put it between a poor and a pass. It also reflects the fact that there's not just some story elements here, that they actually have got a story.
Interesting. I found a little loop here.
Oh, okay.
Which I guess is sort of managing agency, which...
Okay, yeah. So, all right, well, I mean...
Like, to a degree. So, like, I have to pick this option to be able to continue, otherwise it just loops me around.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about agency, because I think the agency, they're going to do a bit better, because this is about... Is it an interactive story? Does it have several branching points? Are there interesting choices? And are there attempts to manage agency? So they certainly have an interactive story, right?
They certainly do.
There's all sorts of choices going on, so I don't think you have to worry about that. So they definitely hit an interactive story with several branching points, right? That's clearly there. Are the choices interesting choices?
Not especially.
I mean, they're not calculations, right? They are.
That is true.
And that they are giving you, in some places, some background to help you make that choice.
Like, part of it, I worry. Like, I feel like if. So part of the issue here is, we asked for sort of like a very short 5-minute sort of prototype that we could see all of the interesting content in. And because of that, I don't feel that I can spend, because it's so much text, like we don't have the time to sit and read all of it. So we're struggling to see sort of, like the engagement with those decisions.
Yes. But I would say that there are
like some of these choices are definitely like interesting. Like some of them are interesting. Some of them are sort of a bit sort of characterization. Like, are you going to be like eager and helpful, or are you going to be disdainful and like complacent?
Yeah. So an interactive story with several branching points and some interesting choices is satisfactory.
So there's definitely a few branching points as well. So the like if we go to the island first, we have a different antagonist than if we go to Icona, and then they reappear, which is an interesting way of doing it.
So what do we think about? So really, whether it's any higher than that depends on their attempts to manage player agency, which in this case they'd have to do through the narrative patterns, I guess. So you did say that you saw an example there of it kind of looping around and bringing you back to a previous choice.
But the problem is well, yeah, like it's definitely an example of it. It's maybe not a fantastic example of it, because the options are dodge or block, and only dodge will let you progress.
So one of the problems is they haven't put in a diagram of their narrative structure. So I don't know what the structure looks like. And it does feel to me a little bit like what we have here is a complete tree, where you just keep making choices and it gives you in different directions, and like you said, you get totally alternative things going on. So I mean, maybe we should. So okay, so good would be a few attempts to manage player agency. So it feels to me that there's maybe one or two places where they've used the structure a little bit, but we just don't have enough evidence of it.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just put halfway between satisfactory and good. That kind of indicates that we can see they've done something, but we just don't have enough details. Poetics.
So this is.
Do the narrative and gameplay complement one another?
Well, hold on. Of the 3 fairy tales we asked them to retell, which one is this, and which of the themes of those 3 are they trying to evoke? Because they've not, have they? They've just told a totally different story, and it's a nice story, but it's not what we asked them to do. And as
the game uses the queen bee as the structure for the narrative, as the motivation for the choices revolve around kind acts towards strangers.
Do they though?
Yeah, not really.
Like we've not.
So
the only choice I remember that involves a kind act towards a stranger was that very minor. Do you help this person reconnect with their lover?
Yeah.
Otherwise, a lot of it's like this. It's like sort of, do you... Oh no, of course, so there's the very first choice of do you help this person?
Yes.
Okay, no, I can kind of see it. You help the person, you get rewarded with honey. There's like a key in a lake. Like there are sort of elements of the story. Okay, maybe I can see some of the connection, but overall, I think that's evidence that I'm struggling to see the themes.
Yeah.
That I had to sort of work through it like that. Like it, they might say that it's all about sort of helping other people, but they've not exemplified that within the game.
So the other thing is that the poetics is about the narrative and the gameplay, and whether they complement one another. And again, the problem here is what is the gameplay? So what we actually have is a kind of, it's like an exploration gameplay, a dramatic exploration. You're exploring the narrative possibilities of this story, right? But that's got nothing to do with the theme of the story. Yeah?
Yeah.
So the gameplay they've gone, but by going for a completely visual novel, they they kind of railroaded themselves into a particular sort of dynamic to their game, which doesn't match the story that they're trying to tell particularly well.
But like you say, you could certainly integrate elements, like sort of gameplay elements, into a visual novel. So, you know, like you say, like an inventory or something, and then you have to give up stuff that would help you.
You know, the queen bee is the very basic thing. It's about, you know, you help these people and then they come and help you afterwards. And you could take the little conversational thing we picked up on, right? So you've got, when you're in a conversation, the characters in that conversation appear on the screen. Let's say you run with that, right? So what you do is you go through the game and you meet people and you help them or don't help them. And at the end, you have a kind of climactic sort of a narrative showdown with somebody. And depending on which characters you've helped in the past, they appear in that showdown, right? And they're shown in the conversational interface, and they change the dialogue and give you new options because they are present, right?
Yeah,
that's an example of how you would do it. You know, you're by exploring, you are finding these companions who then can come back and help you at the end, and then it would have some kind of resonance to it. So you can do it even within the kind of limited gameplay of a visual novel, but they haven't really done it at all, I don't think.
I mean, you're right. That would be a really easy way to do it without adding any new mechanics or anything like that.
No. So the problem here is that we go from the narrative being undercut by the gameplay to the narrative and gameplay complementing one another. I would say that it's so the past is narrative and gameplay have some conflicts, right? And a satisfactory would be narrative and gameplay do not interfere with one another, and it feels like it's somewhere in that space, right? It's like that what you're doing isn't completely undercutting the story or the themes of the story. It just doesn't really have anything to do with it, and the themes are very hard to see. And the reason I'm wondering whether it's have some conflicts, it's because we feel quite lost in the narrative. We're not sure which choices we would want to make and why. Right? There's a lack of coherence, I think, to it thematically. What about the techniques? So the pacing, the use of different techniques. So we've got, what have we got here? We've got the narrator. We've got and these kind of little cutscene things. We've got conversations, which kind of uses the same interface, but you know is arguably slightly different.
I think techniques-wise, they haven't got a huge breadth of different techniques, just purely because of the visual novels like format they've gone for.
What about? Okay, so we've got, and have they used it successfully? Well, they kind of have.
I think they've used it successfully. It's just that there's really only the one sort of.
Yeah, so I think use of one game writing technique is fine. So what about the pacing?
There's definitely some ascendant pacing.
You
start off in the forest. You get some simple you get a simple choice. Then you get some more exposition. There's even sort of a climax at the end. Like you face Diana again. Yeah. So you have that sort of. In fact, you could even argue. So here's the thing. There are definite sort of multiple narrative peaks.
Yeah.
The problem is they're not. Well. Again, because of the lack of gameplay, they don't feel as impactful as they could do because your control over them is so limited. So you're told that, oh, this really exciting dramatic thing has happened. They've just thrown a fireball at them, but it doesn't have the same impact.
Because you're not making choices in that moment.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame.
So, but I mean, I still think that bit of it is probably pretty reasonable. So good would be an ascending pacing with a clear final peak. And we've got, so I would say for techniques we're somewhere between satisfactory and good, because we've got at least one game writing technique which is kind of the satisfactory level, and we've got Actually, no, they're so good would be ascending pacing with a clear final peak and use of more than one game writing techniques. They haven't got that. So okay. So they're sort of satisfactory for the techniques and probably good for the pacing. So somewhere between the two.
Yeah, but how does that rely with the themes?
Well, I mean, we've kind of caught that in the poetic section. We're kind of looking at, how well have they told the story, and they're telling the story reasonably well. There's kind of our main complaint really is that there's too much text and not enough choices.
Yeah.
Right. So feedback. So they said feedback was given before development had started, so it could be described as advice towards development, and therefore implemented in the game. There was a consideration of how much signposting we should add towards each decision. Each choice should not be meaningless, but also should not be obvious. So not clearly bad and good choices. It was important to put clarity in those choices, however, and only less impactful decisions were giving unclear signposting. For example, in acting shy or eager. That kind of works.
I mean, yeah, that is something we noted and commented on. I think a few more of those choices would have been nice, but
yeah,
the fact that they did their best to signpost what they consider the important choices is good.
So they've said the motivation for each choice revolves around kind acts towards strangers. Likewise, the opposite is acting suspicious or hostile, which was reflected using the siblings as foils to the main character. So they tried to use the different characters' perspectives to give you motivation. And when that worked, we noted it, right? We're like, oh, okay, there's a nice little discussion going on before the choice.
Yeah, still not convinced there's a lot about helping other people in this.
No.
There's that one choice at the start, but then the rest of it is very much how are you attacking the antagonist?
Yeah. There's a suggestion to minimize side quests because it's not very necessary for a visual novel. So they said the original idea also had RPG elements, which is why the advice to minimize side quests was mentioned. I think the problem is they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. I agree that you shouldn't have too many side quests, but not having the RPG elements has caused them a lot of problems.
So if this is the group I'm thinking of, they wanted to do a full sort of turn-based RPG, JRPG sort of style battle system as well.
Right.
So if it is the group I'm thinking of, when I told them to sort of maybe sort of trim some of that down, it's because doing a full JRPG is difficult, but it doesn't mean remove all mechanics whatsoever.
No. There was a suggestion of emphasizing player agency through lock-off choices, where a restricted set of choices available there, but the choices that could have been available are also displayed but locked away, emphasizing the consequences of previous choices. We wish to put this early on as an indicator to the player that they may have consequential choices. An example being agreeing to find the lover's partner opens the choice later to inform the water fairy about their lover. I haven't seen those lock-off choices, have you?
No, that's...
Because that would be a different mechanic.
So I'm pretty sure this is the group I spoke to, and I used one of my favourite sort of visual novel style choose your own adventure games as an example, which is Depression Quest, which absolutely does that kind of thing. Yes. Depression Quest does it because it's particularly resonant with their themes.
Yes.
So it only makes sense to hear if you're going to incorporate that, like the reasoning behind that.
And we touched on that earlier on, because we said if your companions came back to help you and opened up new dialogue choices, right? So if in the dialogue choice it actually told you that, so let's say you had a little icon next to the choice which showed you which character is speaking, and if somebody comes back to help you, their icon appears and their choice appears, then that ties it together, right? And that makes it feel like the theme of the story is actually being reflected in the mechanics of the interactions.
So did it say if we agree to help?
It said if we agree to find the lover's partner, it opens the choice later to inform the water fairy about their lover. So presumably if we don't agree to help them. So again, that's
still not locking off and displaying choices that you can't take.
Well, I think the point would be that we would later see the choice was there, but we couldn't do it.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't notice that. I've not seen that in the interface. Okay, so in terms of the feedback, so I think the feedback was articulated, but I'm not entirely sure they fully understood what the feedback was trying to get them to do.
Yeah, they've made some attempts, and like we say, sort of the bits.
Yeah.
Like there are definitely bits of it that we've sort of noticed and we think have had a positive impact. But I think with some of them, they've not understood it, and it's maybe undermined some of their choices.
So satisfactory would be feedback was articulated and some changes have been made with partial success. It feels sort of like that.
Yeah, I think it might be.
Okay. So I mean, So a visual novel style game is a perfectly reasonable thing to put in for this coursework, but it has to have a game element. And you either have to make the narrative itself a game, which is tricky, or you have to put some mechanics alongside the narrative so they can interact with that narrative. That doesn't have to be a full battle system, right? It like you said, it could be an inventory system or a stat system or something. But you need to have something in there, and I think because they've completely stripped out all of the mechanics, and then they've not really embraced the narrative as part of the gameplay, they've got themselves into some problems, and they produced something which looks quite nice actually. It looks like it's quite a nice thing to play, and has quite a complex story, but unfortunately doesn't do quite a lot of the things that we wanted them to do.
Yeah, like it's definitely a sort of a well-polished like piece, and it's the sort of thing that like definitely would be interesting to showcase. It's just a shame that it hasn't sort of done some of the things we asked for.
Okay, I think that's the last one for this video, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the last one. So I guess we'll see you again for another video.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye bye.